At 9 p.m., the billionaire CEO of Tech Dynamics staggered down the empty executive hallway, his speech slurred, his hands trembling, and the only person who noticed the danger was a security guard he barely respected. What he didn't know was that she wasn't just a guard, she was a disgraced doctor with nothing left to lose, and she was about to save his life and expose a truth that could destroy him. The fluorescent lights of the Tech Dynamics headquarters cast harsh shadows across Marcus Chen's face as he stumbled through the executive hallway at 9 p.m. His usually precise gait wavered, and his right hand trembled as he reached for his office door. "Mr. Chen, you should sit down," said Elena Rodriguez, adjusting her security uniform as she approached. The 38-year-old woman had been making her rounds when she noticed the CEO's unsteady movements. "Your coordination is off, and I've seen you struggle with your balance 3 times this week." Marcus Chen, the 48-year-old founder of a $3.5 billion tech empire, turned to face the security guard with a mixture of amusement and disdain. His company had revolutionized cloud computing, and here was a woman who checked badges telling him about his health. Since when did Tech Dynamics start offering medical consultations at the security desk? Marcus's voice dripped with condescension as he finally managed to unlock his door. "Perhaps you should focus on checking visitor passes instead of playing doctor." Elena stood her ground, her dark eyes steady. "Sir, I'm just concerned. These symptoms are none of your business," Marcus interrupted, his words slightly slurred. "I have a team of the best physicians in Silicon Valley. I hardly need advice from someone whose medical expertise extends to checking temperatures during COVID protocols." The irony cut deep. What Marcus didn't know was that Elena Rodriguez had once been Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a respected cardiologist at San Francisco General Hospital. 8 years ago, she'd been one of the youngest department heads in the hospital's history, but that was before she'd blown the whistle on a pharmaceutical kickback scheme that involved several prominent doctors, including her own mentor. The retaliation had been swift and devastating. False accusations of prescription fraud, fabricated evidence of patient neglect, and a coordinated campaign that painted her as an unstable physician who'd cracked under pressure. Despite her spotless record and numerous patient testimonials, the medical board had revoked her license pending an investigation that somehow never concluded. "I understand, Mr. Chen," Elena replied quietly, making a mental note of how he gripped the doorframe for support. "I'll continue my rounds." As she walked away, Elena's trained medical eye cataloged what she'd observed over the past month. Progressive muscle weakness, intermittent confusion during late meetings, tremors that Marcus tried to hide by keeping his hands in his pockets. The symptoms painted a clear picture that made her stomach clench with familiar dread. 3 nights later, Elena made a decision that went against every instinct for self-preservation she'd developed since losing her career. She sat at her small kitchen table in her Oakland apartment and began writing a detailed email to Dr. Sarah Kim, Tech Dynamics' chief medical officer and Marcus's personal physician. The email was anonymous but meticulously clinical. Each observation was time-stamped, each symptom described with medical precision. Progressive upper motor neuron signs, possible bulbar involvement, fasciculations observed in the left deltoid region. She knew Dr. Kim would recognize the terminology, and more importantly, the implications. What Elena didn't expect was for Dr. Kim to trace the email back to her through IT security. 2 days later, Elena was called into a meeting with HR. "Miss Rodriguez," said Janet Palmer, the head of human resources, sliding a printed copy of the email across the table. "Can you explain why you've been stalking our CEO and sending disturbing messages to our executive team?" Elena's heart sank. History was repeating itself. "I wasn't stalking anyone. I was documenting medical symptoms that everyone seems to be ignoring." "And what qualifies you to make medical observations?" Janet's tone was patronizing. "Your background check shows 5 years in security, nothing more." Elena remained silent. She'd learned the hard way that defending herself only made things worse. The background check was accurate. She'd legally changed her name and omitted her medical history after the scandal. No one would hire a disgraced doctor, but they would hire a security guard with military experience from her pre-med days in the Army Reserve. "This is your first and final warning," Janet continued. "Any more unauthorized communications about Mr. Chen's health, and you'll be terminated immediately." That night, Elena did something she'd sworn she'd never do again. She reached out to Dr. Amara Okafor, her former colleague who now ran a private neurology practice in Palo Alto. They'd been residents together, and Amara was one of the few people who'd believed Elena's version of events 8 years ago. "Motor neuron disease," Amara said after Elena described the symptoms over coffee. "Could be ALS, could be a treatable mimic. Without proper testing," she shook her head. "He needs an EMG and MRI immediately." "He won't listen to a security guard," Elena said bitterly. Then we make him listen another way. Amara pulled out her phone. I know his wife, Linda Chen. We serve on the same charity board. Medical professional to concerned spouse. She'll listen. The plan was simple but risky. Amara would express concerns to Linda based on observations from a colleague who works in the building. No names, no direct accusations, just enough medical detail to spark action. It worked too well. The following Monday, Marcus arrived at work, accompanied by Linda, who insisted he see Dr. Kim immediately. The security desk received a call to send Elena to the executive medical suite. You, Marcus said when she entered, his face flushed with anger. You're behind this hysteria, aren't you? Filling my wife's head with nonsense about diseases. Before Elena could respond, he stood up too quickly. His legs buckled, and he crashed back into the chair, his right arm hanging uselessly at his side. His breathing became labored, and panic filled his eyes. Call 911, Elena commanded, immediately shifting into doctor mode. She checked his pulse, noted the facial drooping, and recognized the signs of acute neurological crisis. Tell them possible stroke or neurovascular emergency. We need an ambulance now. As Dr. Kim fumbled with the phone, Elena kept Marcus conscious and monitored his vitals. Her hands moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd handled hundreds of emergencies. How? Marcus wheezed, staring at her with confusion and growing understanding. Save your strength, Elena said firmly. The paramedics will be here soon. At Valley Medical Center, the diagnosis came swiftly. A rare treatable condition called reversible cerebral vasoconstriction syndrome that had been mimicking motor neuron disease. If left untreated for another few weeks, it would have caused permanent brain damage or death. But caught in time, the prognosis was excellent. Dr. David Wu, the attending neurologist, pulled Linda Chen aside. Your husband is incredibly lucky. Whoever documented these symptoms over time saved his life. The progression pattern was textbook, but it's often missed because the early signs are so subtle. Linda's eyes widened. The security guard, Elena. She knew exactly what to do when he collapsed. The truth came out in pieces. Amara confirmed Elena's identity and history. Marcus's own investigation revealed the pharmaceutical scandal Elena had exposed. The very same companies that had contracts with Tech Dynamics. The doctors she'd accused had quietly left practice, but not before destroying her career. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat in his hospital bed, looking at Elena with eyes that held none of their former arrogance. I destroyed people like you, he said quietly. Brilliant minds who didn't fit my image of success. How many innovations have we lost because of prejudice like mine? Elena's response was measured. The question is what you do with that knowledge now. The transformation of Tech Dynamics became a Harvard Business School case study. Marcus didn't just apologize. He restructured his entire company culture. He created the Rodriguez Initiative, a program that actively recruited professionals who'd faced discrimination in their fields. The company's innovation index skyrocketed as diverse perspectives flooded in. Elena was offered her choice of positions, from chief medical officer to head of a new workplace wellness division. She chose neither. Instead, she proposed something revolutionary, a program that trained security and service staff to recognize medical emergencies, partnering with Stanford Medical School to create certification programs. Every building has hidden expertise, Elena explained at the program's launch. The janitor who was an engineer in their home country, the cafeteria worker with a chemistry degree, the security guard who was a doctor. We're already here. You just have to see us. The program spread across Silicon Valley and beyond. Lives were saved not just from medical emergencies, but from the tragedy of wasted potential. Marcus became an unlikely advocate for inclusion, speaking at conferences about how bias nearly cost him his life, and how many invisible people had probably tried to help him before Elena. Dr. Sarah Kim, who had initially dismissed Elena's concerns, became one of the program's biggest champions. We're trained to respect credentials and titles, she said in a widely viewed TED Talk, but wisdom and expertise don't always come in the packages we expect. 5 years later, Elena stood before a crowd at the National Medical Association's annual conference, accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award for her work in democratizing medical knowledge and breaking down barriers in healthcare. I spent years bitter about losing my career, she said, looking out at the audience of young medical professionals, but sometimes our greatest defeats position us for our most important victories. When we're pushed to the margins, we see things that those in the center miss. The question is, will we keep watching and waiting for our moment to make a difference? Marcus Chen watched from the front row, his health fully restored, his company transformed. He'd learned that the people we dismiss as just anything, just security guards, just immigrants, just service workers, carry universes of knowledge and capability within them. The security company that employed Elena received more applications from former professionals than they could handle. It became a running joke in Silicon Valley that the safest buildings weren't just protected from external threats, they were watched over by guards who might save your life in ways you'd never expect. Elena never returned to traditional medicine. She'd found something more powerful, a way to ensure that expertise would never again be invisible, simply because it wore the wrong uniform or spoke with the wrong accent. Her legacy wasn't just the lives she saved, but the barriers she broke, proving that heroes don't always wear white coats, sometimes they wear security badges and see what others are too proud to notice. The real revolution wasn't in the technology Marcus's company produced, but in the recognition that every person who walked through those doors carried potential that deserved to be seen, respected, and utilized. It had taken a near-death experience to open one man's eyes, but the ripple effects changed an entire industry's perspective on who matters and whose voices deserve to be heard.